The 2023 NFL Draft is tomorrow, and Nation, I want you to join Jeremy Chuggs and I Raiders Draft Party. We're going to get the picks before you see them on television. We have tons of giveaways, and not only will we break down every single Raiders pick on day 1, day 2, and day 3, but we're going to be live for the entirety of the NFL Draft, over 20 hours of live content. So subscribe, turn on those notifications. Are you going to be there? I hope the answer is yes. Raider Nation, what's going on? You're watching the Raiders Report, and today's show is presented by Manscaped. I tell you one thing, the NFL Draft is nuts, and I'm going to make sure that my nuts look great for the big day. Head on over to manscaped.com with code Raiders to save 20% off and get free shipping on the best male grooming products out there. Right now, the top rumor circulating around the silver and black also involves the Philadelphia Eagles. There is a report going out right now that the Eagles have at least called to check in on a potential trade with the Las Vegas Raiders at the 7th overall pick. I saw the story break a little bit yesterday, so what I figured I would try to do over the next 12 hours is contact some people, reach out to the people that I trust, and do a little bit of homework. So yesterday morning, an Eagles beat writer said that the Philadelphia Eagles, they've been looking to potentially trade up. And they've been looking to trade up with multiple teams out there. Raiders.Scout then on Instagram said that the Eagles called the Raiders about potentially making that deal at number 7. So when I saw this, you think Eagles trade. There's a little bit of smoke. Raiders.Scout on Instagram says that, all right, they picked up the phone, they called. Just because you pick up the phone and call doesn't mean that a deal is going to get done. But it does mean that some of the wheels are starting to get turning and teams are doing their homework. On top of that, we know the Raiders want to trade back, so do I think that this is 100% legitimate that the Eagles called the Raiders? Yes, I do. But that does not mean that this trade ends up going down. Here is what Scout posted on his Instagram late last night. The Eagles have called to check on a potential trade for the 7th overall pick. It's rumored the Eagles want to move ahead of the Bears for Georgia defensive tackle Jalen Carter. The Silver and Black have met with the Georgia defensive tackle, and if you look at just the on-the-field standpoint, he's probably the top prospect in this year's class. And I'm glad that the Raiders went ahead and looked into potentially taking Carter, because there was that old report out there that the Raiders, they weren't going to do it. The reason why you bring in Carter is because of this exact scenario where if a team wants him bad enough, yes, he's not a quarterback, but because he is that talented of a team, and if you're a team like the Eagles that are like, you know what, right now is our Super Bowl window, could they potentially get a deal done? One of the reasons why I'm also buying into this is because, well, you got Jordan Davis, who, guess what, old teammate. And then Fletcher Cox is not getting any younger whatsoever. Also, they lost Javon Hargrave. So one of the things that the Eagles did last season to make it to the Super Bowl was this team racked up 70 sacks. They had an elite defensive line, and they lost their top defensive tackle. So if you're Philly, you're Howie Roseman, who is ultra aggressive, and you're Nick Sirianni, you're like, all right, well, what was the blueprint to get us to the Super Bowl last year? We had a great defensive line. If Jalen Carter's that dude, then guess what? You're dumb for the Eagles to not trade up, because then guess what? They got another pick at number 30. So I 100% believe in Raiders.Scout's reporting. He's one of the best in the biz. And I also know that the Eagles, over the past year and a half, especially, shouldn't even say just a year and a half, as long as Howie Roseman has been the GM, Philly's been aggressive. So with all that smoke, will there be fire on draft night? We'll have to wait to see. Hopefully you're tuned in with Chuggs and I. So the Raiders, they trade back in round 1. Which team will it be? If you had to look into your crystal balls presented by Manscaped, tell me right now, which team do you think is the most likely to trade up with the Raiders? To me, some of the trade-up candidates are the Philadelphia Eagles at number 10. I'm going to be keeping a close eye on the Tennessee Titans, that relationship with Mike Vrabel. The New England Patriots, I mean, it's the New England Patriots, right? The Commanders and then the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Those are the top 5 teams that I believe are the most likely to trade up with the Raiders at pick number 7. Coming up next here on the show, I got 2 other players that Philly could potentially trade up for with the Raiders. We already talked about Jalen Carter, but guess what? I think that there's another 2 names that all Raider fans should keep in mind. Chuggs and I were going to be live on the Raiders Report, but guess what? our guys at Chat Sports, and their shows get just as wild as ours, are also going to be live. So if you're not already subbed, go check it out. We got over 330 subs over there. I used to first start doing the draft shows, and then I'd make my way over to Raiders, but now we just hang out on Raiders. Picks before you see them on TV, even more giveaways. Go get Tom drunk. Go get some of the other guys at Chat Sports a little bit wild. There's the link down below. It's also going to be available for you guys in the comments and in the description of today's show. Let's look at another prospect that I could see Philadelphia potentially doing some homework on and trading up. It is Peter Skoronski. I believe Skoronski is the clear-cut number one overall offensive lineman in this year's class. And yes, he played left tackle at Northwestern. Does he have short arms? People call them T-Rex arms. I get it. They're short. They're less than 32 inches, which is very small for an offensive tackle. However, though, his process ability, he's going to be fine in the NFL. He's going to be an elite offensive guard. So the Eagles' offensive line, much like I talked about the defensive line, they got as far as they did last season because they won in the trenches. They won on the defensive line, and they won on the offensive line. Unfortunately for them, they have at least one weak spot on that O-line in Cam Jurgens, and then, Lane Johnson, he's not getting any younger as well. They lost Isaac Seumalo, who was the top offensive guard in this year's free agency class, and much like I just talked about with Javon Hargrave, could they try to replace Hargrave with Jordan Davis? Could they potentially try to replace Seumalo with Peter Skoronski? All of those possibilities are absolutely something to keep in mind. I got one more player that I know a lot of y'all fantasy people out there are going to love. And if you're trying to be your girl's fantasy, well, then go to Manscaped right now. Manscaped.com. Code Raiders for 20% off and free shipping. I use the Lawnmower 4.0 in front of every big occasion, which I'm always trying to be the guy that wants to surprise Alex, do like a surprise dinner. But as soon as I get out the Lawnmower 4.0, she's like, all right, what the hell are we doing tonight? But I do it because even though I like to think that I'm her number one overall pick, I'm trying to be the top prospect on her big board at all times. And when I use the Lawnmower 4.0, my board does, feel a little bit bigger, if you know what I'm talking about. Because when you get rid of the George W., it's all about it. You can see it a little bit better. But the Lawnmower 4.0 is not only going to make sure that your downstairs is looking great, every product at Manscaped is modified and made to make sure that you're not just getting into the red zone, you are scoring. So if you haven't already, go down in the comments and in the description of today's show. Click on that link from Manscaped. Use code Raiders, 20% off. And Jeremy's saying in my ear, we might be doing a giveaway for people who purchase Manscaped stuff. If you're a real one, you already know the deal. But all I'm going to say is this. If you're waiting for an opportunity to say, Mitch, give me an opportunity to buy Manscaped, now's your opportunity. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I'll tell you more about it on draft night. Code Raiders, manscaped.com. Let's go to the next player here that I believe that the Philadelphia Eagles could potentially trade up for. It's Bijan Robinson. Do I think that trading up for a running back is the smart move? No, I really do not. However, when you listen to what Howie Roseman has said over the last week, they're not drafting based on position. They're going to be drafting based on players who they believe are freaks. Jalen Carter, freak. Bijan Robinson is a freak. If you take out just position, you can make a legitimate argument that Bijan is a top 10. Hell, I've seen some people have him in the top 5 of their overall prospects. Yes, they brought in Rashad Penny, but Rashad Penny has dealt with tons, and I mean tons of injuries. They have an undersized Kenneth Gainwell. Boston Scott seems to only play well against the New York Giants. And then they lost their top running back, Miles Sanders, who had over 1,200 yards, who had 259 carries, 11 touchdowns, a back that they drafted in round 2 just a few seasons ago. So if you're trying to replace Miles Sanders, if I'm Jalen Hurts, I want a solid running game. If I'm Philadelphia with that offensive line, this is your win now mode. So even though it goes against everything I believe in taking a running back, if you're in a win now mode and you're in a Super Bowl caliber team and you think you're a running back away, you trade up and you get the pick done. So the top 3 players that I could foresee that the Eagles give McDaniels and Ziegler a call for and say, hey, we're going to trade up with you. These are the 3 players, Jalen Carter, Peter Skoronski, and Bijan Robinson. Now, I get it. It's a lot of Eagles talk already here, but some of y'all are like, well, how does this apply to the Raiders? It applies to the Raiders because If the Eagles want to trade up with the silver and black, that means we get more draft capital. So what I wanted to do is talk about the news and the rumors around the Eagles trading up, which I've done. Then I outlined what players that I want y'all to keep an eye out for that the Eagles could trade up for. And now it's time to get into 3 trade ideas that the Raiders and Eagles could do in round 1. Before I show you that, here are the Philadelphia Eagles 2023 draft picks. 2 first-rounders. You got pick 10, pick 30. Then in round 2 at 62. Round 3, 94. Nothing in the 5th, nothing in the 6th, 2 7th-rounders, and nothing in the 4th as well. For the Raiders, plenty of picks. 12 picks in total. You got 4 in the top 100, a round 4, and then 3 in the 5th, 2 in the 6th, 2 in the 7th. So Philadelphia, if they wanted to be able to stockpile in some of the later rounds, the Raiders are ideally a team to 100% look at. Let's now go to the trade ideas that we have cooked up here. You could swap 7 and 10. This is the obvious one, and every trade that I'm going to show you is going to be at least a little bit different. So the Philadelphia Eagles, they pick up the phone, they give you a call, and they said, hey, it's 10 for 7. What else do you want? Every trade that I did here, I tried to look at the trade value chart. I also tried to base it on when you trade up, usually you give up a little bit more in that deal because you want to move up. And every trade that you're going to see, I do think makes some sense one way or another. Spoiler alert, I know a lot of y'all probably aren't going to like the last trade. So what do you think here? The Raiders, they get pick number 10 overall, and they get a second-round pick at 62. Eagles get pick 7, and now they have another pick in the 5th round at 144. I want to know down in the comments section, who wins this trade? And I'm going to ask you who wins every trade that I show, so it's going to be very important for you to follow instructions. So if it says Raiders, type Raiders. If you think it's Eagles, type Eagles. That way when I go back and look at the comments, I know what deal and trades you're talking about. Let's go to the second trade idea here, and it's more the Raiders are really trying to stock up, and they're trying to get 2 first-round picks. I said it. 2 first-round picks. Mitch, how is that possible? Raider Ron, wild one, I'm glad you asked. So here's the second trade idea. The Raiders get both of the Eagles first. You get pick 10 and pick 30. And the reason why I like this right here, you jump right ahead of the Kansas City Chiefs. For Philadelphia, they get the first round pick at number 7. You give up a third round pick and 100. That was the deal that the Raiders made for Darren Waller, so the silver and black would still have another third round pick. And then you also throw in 2 fifths, 141 and 174, which then still leaves the Raiders with a 5th. Don't get me wrong, losing 2 fifths, yeah. Losing your third, cool. But to come away with the draft with 2 first-round picks, sign me up for that. What do you think, though? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Some of y'all are probably like, the Raiders need the extra picks. We're getting 2, we're giving up 4. I'll say if you can come away with 3 legit starters on your defensive side of the football, which you should be able to get at 10, 30, and 38, hell, maybe even 70 for the Raiders, you'd be feeling pretty confident. 5 picks in the top 70, I'm about it. The final trade, which is the one y'all are not going to like, but I had to put it in here because the latest rumors, the latest stories, could Josh Jacobs be on his way out? When I think about the latest around Jacobs, it's he said he'd be willing to play underneath the franchise tag, but only if the Raiders stocked up around him. It doesn't really seem like he's all that excited. He wants a brand new deal. I know he wants a brand new deal, but what if the Raiders say, hey, we're not going to give you a brand new deal? I don't really forecast seeing teams trading a first-round pick for running back, but in this scenario, the Eagles, they call the Las Vegas Raiders, and they said, hey, what's available? And the Raiders and Eagles, they can't quite get a deal done at 7 and 10. But the Raiders know that they're interested potentially in a Jalen Carter and a Bijan Robinson. But let's say they get a Peter Skoronski because Jalen Carter's off the board and they don't want to go with Bijan. Could you then potentially see a scenario where the Raiders and Eagles make a deal? The Raiders know that they're not going to get a new deal. Nobody's going to go with the non-exclusive, and you might as well get something instead of getting absolutely nothing for Josh Jacobs. So what do you think? Raiders get pick number 30. The Philadelphia Eagles get Josh Jacobs. And the only reason why they would do this is because, again, they're trying to replace Miles Sanders. Jalen Carter potentially went off the board already. And they don't want to go with Bijan all that high. If you can get Peter Skoronski and get Josh Jacobs, if you're the Eagles, you'd probably be feeling pretty good about that. Yeah, I like the idea of getting a first rounder for Jacobs, but this one would sting a little bit, especially on draft night. So those are the 3 trades that we have. Also, if you haven't already, this is definitely a big time to follow me on Twitter, Instagram. Make sure you hit up Chugs as well. We're going to be doing tons of giveaways over the next 3 days. So hopefully you're tuned in on social media. Hopefully you're tuned in to Chugs. Down below, you want to put yourself on screen? You can go for it. If you have the capability, Chugs is the one that pushes all the buttons around here. I know this. I've been doing the draft here at Chat Sports for 6 years. We have fun every year, and this is probably the year with the amount of picks that the Raiders have is the year that I am looking forward to more than any. Chugs is a little embarrassed. He's got to get a haircut, is what he told me. I have to get a haircut today too, though, so I'll be cleaned up for tomorrow. If anybody knows a barber, hit up Chugs at Jeremy Chugs. All right, before we get out of here today, here are the final 3 trade ideas. I'm going to roll through them one more time. So let me know which trade is your favorite. If it's trade number 1, where the Raiders get a first and a second, type 1. If it's deal number 2, and full disclosure, this is my favorite deal for the Raiders. And then there's number 3. I don't really anticipate anybody picking number 3, but if anything, that's what this show's about, is interacting with the nation. So from Jeremy Chugs and myself, we will see you all live for the 2023 NFL Draft. The biggest question out there is, what will the Raiders do with pick 7? Hopefully you're interacting and watching Chugs and I live, because win, lose, or tie, Raider Nation till we die, and it starts tomorrow at the draft.